In a remote house on the island of Jersey, a woman awakens from a nightmare. Grace Stewart lives in the house with her 2 children. She invites the new housekeepers in, Mrs. Mills, her husband, and their mute daughter. Grace explains to the housekeepers that her children cannot be exposed to light. They have a rare condition and are photosensitive. The light will destroy their skin. One night, the daughter, Anne, speaks to her brother. She says there are others in the house with them. She is the only one who sees them. When Grace finds out, she is furious at her daughter. She refuses to believe in the possibility of spirits. She leaves the house to find a priest to bless it. While lost in the fog, her husband Charles suddenly appears. The husband she believed had been killed in the war. Charles says he bleeds sometimes. Mrs. Miller tells her husband to wait to uncover the graves on the property. She gives Miss Stewart pills to calm her and tells her, "We will do what needs to be done." Grace hears a piano playing by itself. The door opens without her. She can no longer deny the presence of a diabolical force in the house. Charles seems wounded in more ways than one. He lies in bed with seemingly no interest in seeing either his children or his wife. His mind is somewhere else. Charles soon leaves. Grace visits Anne in the bedroom, but sees it is not Anne, but a demonic entity. Grace shatters the illusion by striking out at her own daughter. She can't trust her own mind. Mrs. Miller tries to tell her that her daughter is right. There are intruders in the house. The next day, the curtains are gone. Grace shields the children from the light. She accuses the servants of removing them. At night, the children sneak out and discover the graves belonging to Mrs. Miller and her family. The children flee in horror from the restless spirits. Mrs. Miller tells Grace to go upstairs and speak with the intruders. Once upstairs, Grace opens the door, and Grace discovers a family practicing a seance. Using a medium, they are able to break the veil separating the world of the living from the world of the dead. The daughter, Anne, reveals that she and her brother were killed by their mother in their sleep, smothered to death by pillows. We know now what Mrs. Miller has been trying to tell her. It is she who is intruding on the world of the living. Grace is an uptight, demanding woman. She lives in a world of locked doors and shut curtains. She believes strongly in the Bible and indoctrinates her children with her beliefs, refusing to believe in the possibility of anything else. Her refusal to let the light into the house reflects her perpetual desire to live in the dark, to not face the truth about the disintegrating relations with her husband and with herself. After her husband was gone and the previous servants had abandoned her, Grace had had enough. Ghost stories are about haunting, both literal and subjective. Being haunted by the past, by the regrets, the longing for something that cannot be recovered, that which is lost to time. Grace can shut the curtains and lock the doors of her own mind, but she cannot ever fully forget the truth about what she's done. When a mother can do something like that to her own children, there is no turning back. In the end, she can't forget. In the same way her husband, Charles, can't forget the faces of the people he's killed or seen killed on the battlefield, faces locked in frozen grimaces for all eternity. But perhaps by opening the door just a little bit, she can offer the hope of a better understanding outside of the narrow limitations of her own perception. How many of us live in worlds of our own creation, blinding ourselves to the possibility that there are others who see things in a different light? The Others is an example of the type of gothic horror rarely seen in Hollywood today. Most horror films are loud, with emphasis on special effects and in-your-face scares. Most of the scares in this film are left to the imagination. Sound design stands out, with sound effects mixed much louder than the dialogue. Even the click of Grace's heels seems subtly unnerving. The twist ending would seem influenced by the success of M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. Personally, I saw the twist coming. Perhaps the removal of several scenes would have disguised it more. But the movie is still effective and worth checking out for those with enough time between them and the abyss.